And I'll tell you the story because it's the basis for what I'm about to, the piece I'm about to do. Okay, so basically I went into Spar and I said hello to Molly behind the counter. Molly, if you know Coggeshall Spar, we know that Molly's kind of institution. I mean, she's always been behind that counter, and she's been there even longer than Spar has been there, quite frankly. And so I said hi to Molly, and then I went over with some beers to the counter, and she ID'd me, and then we fought, verbally, obviously. I'm not a monster. And then, yeah, and in the end she refused to serve me. And then I had to walk home and get my dad to then come down the street and buy my 2 cans of Kronenberg, ladies and gentlemen, while I waited outside in the car. Now, that's embarrassing, right? And that's what being 16 years old is all about. And so I kind of thought I'd write a story about that process as means of coming to terms with it. No, that's bollocks. In order to humiliate Molly and vilify myself as an adult, I wrote a story about it. And in fact, I wrote loads. I wrote millions of them. And they're very, very short stories, where basically it's the same thing that happens, but I tell them in a different style. And I thought for my one other piece I did tonight, I just read you a selection of those stories. So these are all, but basically what I'm going for here is this kind of Bill Murray Groundhog Day kind of like cycle of like the same thing again and again and again. This kind of cycle of frustration and resentment and disgust, all set in Spar. That's Spar, the ultimate convenience shopping. Okay, so I thought I'd start off with this kind of loosely written in a kind of diction of a 19th century novelist. It's called Trips to Spar. If you have ever considered alcoholism a viable career, well then you'll know how I feel as I make my way across the welcoming evergreen of Spar, a place I hold dear to my heart, having passed that glowing threshold 100 times over on my way to the plasma screen and back again. Molly watches as I test the temperature each beer against my cheek. Do you have an identification? She asks, her eyes seeing through me into the war zone beyond. But predictably, I do not. Just my money and my beard and the sound of Bonnie Tyler expanding through the aisles. Number 2. If you've ever woken up in a bath of ice with only a limerick for company, then you will know how I feel as I make my way across the funhouse mirror of Spar, a place I hold responsible for the vomit on my trainers, having passed up my lunch 100 times on my way to unconsciousness and back again. Molly watches as I test the cryogenic capabilities of the freezer chest. Do you have any identification? She asks, her eyes like archery targets in mist. But predictably, I do not. Just the endless passage of centuries and a ready meal for one that I have come to call friend. If you've ever started up a 1,000-strong underage drinking racket, then you will know how I feel as I break my way into the flimsy darkness of Spar, a place I hold hostage on a biannual basis, having sworn vengeance on Molly and all her kind on my way to HMP Wayland and back again. Molly watches as I hypnotise the security cameras and then urinate on the freshly baked croissants. Do you have an identification? She asks, her eyes deftly penetrating my genius customer disguise. But predictably, I do not. Just a blood-curdling shriek and a smoke bomb that freezes crimes like snow globes. If you have ever ridden an insect into the mouth of Satan, even know how I feel as I make my way down to the subterranean inverted Temple of Spar. A place I hold, writhing in my palsied hands, having passed that fireproof swastika 100 times on my way to the shores of death and back again. Molly watches as horses drown in the electrified sea of the damned. Do you have any identification? She asks, her eyes a maggot hatchery. But predictably, I do not. Just a catalogue of sins found in flesh, and a capacity not to take myself too seriously. If you have ever in error stopped heaven for weather, bumped beds for a chance to put your hands on the ceiling, well then you know how I'm feeling as my flow is appealing. Girls, give me some G-string, get out of your seat and put my key on your key ring. I think you for beer in that spot. I place a hole like a bass guitar, starting with the friends I'm walking up to scar. Blah, open the fridge and I'm back at the bar, bringing the party back to life like I'm CPR. Ha, so you passed up your chance to dance, so get your ass at the spa for a glance askance from the serving staff. You treat a Burberry cat like a murder rap. Service, ha, I never heard of that. Take the smoky pack to the fridge and back, so let Marley watch, cause I'm a party glass. We're getting jolly hot, drinking the barley, stop. That's actually call the shots, Marley's got the drop, nothing but an ID. So here in the place, I've got to keep things tidy. But when Molly talks, I need you guys right beside me. So when she says, have you got any ID? You say, here it is, ma'am. When she says, have you got any ID? You say, here it is, ma'am. Are you ready? Have you got any ID? Here it is, ma'am. You got any ID? Here it is, ma'am. Got any ID? Here it is, ma'am. Yeah, behind me, eyes and waistline. Have you got any ID? Got any ID? Here it is. Got any ID? Here it is. K-18, good work, brain man. What does that brain of yours come with a paid plan? It must be really hard to break it down for the layman. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus Suddenly I'm running with perspiration. I'm burst with the curse, but my nerves, they stay calm. Wallet from the pocket, but I know the game I'm gonna need more than a young person's rail card. Because predictably, I got nicks. You see, I've got pics, but the face won't fit to me. And if I want to walk out with more than tonic, I'm going to need a passport, private card, driving license, or someone from a photo ID with my date of birth on it. Have you got any identification? Have you got any identification? Have you got any identification? And I said, I'm 28. She said, I'm sorry, it's the law. And I said, well look, I've got my student card, all right, and it hasn't got my date of birth on it, but it does say that I'm currently studying for a doctorate, okay, so I'm a PhD student, okay, so like, it's unlikely that I'd have a card like this and be only 17 years old. No, I'm not Doogie Howser. And she said, you've had your fun. Can you please step aside so I can serve the gentleman beside you? I said, look, I've been coming here and getting served since I was 15 years old. That's some 13 years ago. Now, even if you have now reneged your opinion of how old I am at this precise second, that means when you first started serving me booze, I was 3 years old. She said, I've never seen you before in my life. And she looked at me with her eyes, but all I could hear was Bonnie Tyler coming down from the ceiling singing, turn around, turn around. So I did. Thank you.